Doctors of Reddit, what is the strangest reaction you have had from a patient after telling them they don't have long left? Was a hospital chaplain. Had to stop because it beat me down, and my heart broke over every one of those people. Still, to answer your question, most cried and were visibly afraid, but one guy who was my age at the time, fairly young, was dying from alcoholism related issues, and I was around shortly after he got the news that he wouldn't live as soon as they took him off the dialysis. He said, "Don't feel sorry for me, I did this to myself. I'm just worried about how my mom is going to handle it. But really, I'm fine with it. I know I went too far and this is what happens." Woo-wee. My dad is a doctor. I asked him a few times if anyone has ever died, his most memorable patient / what made it worth it. He said the most memorable patient was a young girl he had, 16 years old, who was dying. When he spoke to her about what was happening, she simply asked if someone could bring her the book in her bag and keep her mom out of the room while she read, because those people exhaust me. She finished the book and a week later died. My mom's godmother reportedly looked at the doctor when he told her she had stage IV lung cancer and said, "Well, I'm 94. It was bound to be something." Completely calm and accepting. It happens, but every single patient encounter until then had understandably involved shock and bursting into tears. This man was calm, cool, collected. He was very polite and thanked me for my time. Turned out his daughter is a radiologist at the hospital we sent the biopsy sample to, and she had accessed his patient files to inform him of the news as soon as it came through 2 days earlier. So I had told him nothing new, and he had just politely sat through my talk before we could start discussing referrals. I don't know how I felt about the encounter. Putting your child in a position where they have to be the one to tell their parent they have 6 months left to live is rough, and there are medical legal issues. But waiting to hear biopsy news is also rough. I don't know his daughter or their relationship, so I put it away in the back of my mind and didn't take it out again. I'm not a doctor, but my friend is. He told me a story of an older patient he was treating with cancer and he was giving him the treatments available to him to prolong his life and give him a little bit longer with his family and friends. The guy responded back with something like this: "Son, I've lived on this earth for 76 years. I've seen my kids grow up to be amazing, and they've given me grandchildren to enjoy. I don't want to start a treatment that takes away my ability to enjoy them. I damn sure don't want to start treatments that make a steak taste like metal. I've had many years here, and when my time comes it will come. Thank you for your help." Most were heartbreaking and involved a lot of tears on both sides. On the brighter side, I once had a patient in her 80s with a fairly prominent chest tattoo which had remarkably sharp definition and a modern flair. She informed me that she always wanted a tattoo and she'd reached the point in her life that she did what made her happy, so she had it done that year. She was a damn cool grandma. My mom told me that when she had staph infection in her knee really bad when I was just a kid, her doctors told her to make plans for her death just in case. My mom just busted out crying for about 15 seconds before she just turned into the most cheerful woman. Needless to say, it spooked my dad, her nurses, and her doctors. Not a doctor, but when I was in pharmacy school I did a rotation at a cancer ward. Had a few people die while I was there. One was a 90-something-year-old man who had some sort of brain cancer. The doctor told him he had about a week to live. The next day we were doing our rounds, and he was in his room singing "I'm about to die. I'm about to die" over and over, and laughing about it. EMT here. I went to a patient who was at the end of his life. He knew he had end of life care instructions and a DNR. We were called as he was vomiting and having abdominal pain. We got there and gave him pain relief and just sat with him for a bit. It was clear he was on the way out and probably wouldn't live through the night, and he knew it. He asked us if he was going to die, and we didn't outright tell him, but we said his vital signs were starting to decline and he wasn't looking too good, etc. When we said this, he kinda just went okay then and sat there in silence with his eyes closed and almost like a little smile on his face. I have no idea what he was thinking, but he almost seemed relieved, like glad that it was all coming to an end. From what I know of him, He'd been virtually bedbound with pretty much 24/7 care for the last few months. His wife had died about a year earlier and his family lived away. I like to think that in his last few hours he found some relief in the fact that his pain would soon be over and that he wouldn't have to suffer alone anymore. When my great aunt was dying in June, they told her they could give her some treatments to give her another 6 months or so, and she basically said, "No thanks, just pain meds for me." They told her she'd only make it another 2, maybe 3 weeks on pain meds. She told them that's not her problem anymore. I think she died 2 weeks after being put in hospice. The nurses all told us that she was so sweet, they couldn't believe how ready she was to die. Not a doctor here, but have a rather strange response. 3 years ago, my grandma was diagnosed with congestive heart failure and was given a few months to live. The whole family was still in a fragile state as we had just lost my grandpa less than a month before. The doctor was very kind and did his best to let the news down as gently as he could to her. When he asked her how she felt about it, she looked him dead in the eyes and went, "Well, to be honest, rather bored." She passed exactly a year after my grandpa on the same day. Not a doctor, but when my grandma was 89 she was diagnosed with a brain tumor. It was operable and physically she was perfectly fine. The downside of the operation was that, given her age, doctors couldn't tell if she would have been still herself after surgery. She refused surgery. She said, "All of my friends have died. My husband has died. All I've got now are my memories. I don't want to lose them." She died 4 weeks later in her sleep. It's been hard for us because the tumor took her lucidity away, so she wasn't even able to recognize us in her final days. But I totally understood her reasons, and if I'll ever be in that situation I think I'd do the same. Nurse Butterpart was suffering from chronic liver failure and was due to have a medically assisted dying order with a physician. This man was in chronic pain most of his life, but just before he was due to go out, a snowstorm hit and the physician couldn't fly to the town to get to him. So they delayed his death for 2 weeks and boy was he pissed. You see, to be mentally prepared to die is one thing. To have it delayed must be emotionally and physically painful because now you have to live with doubt or anger. In these 2 weeks he made a friend in the same unit. She didn't know he was due to die until the last day. She cried, saying she didn't understand why he didn't want to say goodbye to her. He decided to leave his belongings with her as it was easier to do that than to say goodbye. So as he was rolling past the unit to die, you could hear the sobbing of a frail broken woman. She admitted to considering to do the same thing from her own chronic illness, but was glad she didn't pull through. I imagine the man died with more than he thought he could carry. He came in with nothing and left with a friendship. But he wanted to die. He just simply could not live in pain anymore. Not a doctor, but I sat in the room with my mom when the oncologist said the chemo wasn't working and the mets spread. Did she want to try something else? Nope, she was done. Doc said 3 to 9 months. That was November 2017. She passed March 2018. She was calm, pleased with her decision, sense of relaxation that those years of chemo, hydration, blood work, office visits were over as that had become her life. She finally gave zero fucks. We went out to eat for lunch. That weekend her skin was neon highlighter yellow. This woman never left the house without head to toe Ralph Lauren and perfect hair. Opted for home hospice and all those comfy meds involved. Not sure if that's strange or not, but finding peace in ending life isn't normal to most of us. The fuck do you know? You ain't God. He was given 6 months. That was 5 years ago. He still has inoperable cancer, but he's in remission. My grandfather was totally okay with it. He became a shell of his former self when Nana died, and was just waiting for God the rest of his life. When he found out he had inoperable lung cancer he just took it all philosophically. He was ready to go. When they buried him my mum put it best, "There you go. You're back with her. You got what you wanted." They'd been married almost 60 years. She passed a week before their 60th wedding anniversary. I can only imagine the pain he must have gone through. I'm a doctor, and the strangest reaction I've had was, "Are you sure?" Okay, then. To be fair, I think he was already a little numb. His wife had died from cancer about 2 weeks ago, and then I had to tell him he had lung cancer. One time I told her mother her child wouldn't live for very long and she freaked. She sweared and stormed out the room. I think she has never entered the hospital again. Somewhere out there is a 90-year-old woman who, when told she had terminal cancer, decided that she wanted to spend the rest of her life traveling with her dog. If she's still out there, I hope she's happy. Not a doctor, but an apprentice in college. My boss said to me to go with him when she delivered the notice, because I will need to do it one day. Dude was silent as a rock. I was the last one to leave his room. He called me and said, finally, I'm going to Valhalla to see my grandma. I said, yes bro, your grandma is waiting for you. Never saw a most sincere smile in my life. He didn't had anyone left. I was the last person that talked to him, and was the first person he talked that was kind to him. He passed away, and the next day, I cried when I heard the news. Read up on the story of magician David Blaine, and how his mother passed away in his arms when he was a kid. This event was so profound that it forged the David Blaine we know today, who is truly an incredible person.